So football season is upon us. I don't even talk about the Broncos. I don't even know what's going on with them. We are fourth in line for the first round draft pick next year. No. Yeah, okay, so, but you know those football players that seem to have the gift of trash talk? Okay? Seattle has a few. Broncos had a few. Other teams, have some. They talk the talk. They yak and yak and yak, and they mock, and they're really good at getting underneath their opponent's skin. And usually, in my opinion, the most satisfying response to that is, this is by the other player, is, hey, let's take it up on the field. As in, I'm going to let my play do the talking, not just my talking. And as you know, the people who yak the loudest, if they are unable to deliver on the field, people just stop paying attention to them, don't they? They don't care. Because what they said was not validated by how they played. It's just like if you get a lineman up there, and this is where Von Miller's on the Broncos. He's still good no matter how bad the Broncos are. It's like a lineman who goes up and mocks Von Miller and saying he stinks, he can't play, he can't tackle anybody, the guy's worthless. And then Von Miller proceeds to smoke him every single time. Is anyone going to listen to the lineman, or are they just going to laugh? They're just going to laugh. See, one who cannot back up his talk is eventually discredited and ignored, and he's counted as a fraud. So Jesus has finished his Sermon on the Mount. So we're in like the last two verses of Matthew chapter 7. Verse 28 says, "And when Jesus finished these sayings, the crowds were astonished at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one who had authority and not as the scribes." See, Jesus was talking the talk. What Jesus said was contradictory. He contradicted exactly what the Pharisees and the scribes were teaching week after week after week after week. And Jesus is like, no, all of you are wrong. That is not how you interpret this. That is not how you know. You are never good enough to earn entrance into the kingdom of heaven. So if someone goes and talks this huge talk and pretty much saying, I disagree with every single religious ruler in the nation of Israel, he's talking the talk. But there needs to be something a little bit more. What gives him the authority just to walk in and change everything? Jesus, we've been doing this for hundreds of years. What gives you the right and the authority to suddenly come up and change it? And I think that's what Matthew's trying to communicate here, because he talks about first, he's like, Jesus spoke as one with authority. And then he shifts the authority, and now we see in chapter 8 that Jesus isn't just one who talks, but that Jesus is someone who actually has the authority over not just teaching, but over storms, diseases, demons. Jesus is one who has authority. He backed up his talk. So look and read chapter 8, verse 1. It says, "And when he had came down from the mountain, a great crowd followed him. And behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I will be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed." See, right off the bat, we see a shift. These passages aren't necessarily about Jesus' teachings, but communicating the fact that Jesus has authority. And this account in Matthew 8 is a conglomeration, as we will see, of miracle accounts and faith encounters. And what can happen as we start reading this passage is we can lose sight of what Matthew is trying to teach us here. We can get so bogged down with these accounts and try to split them up and separate them all from each other that we can miss the fact that what Matthew is trying to tell us about Jesus is Jesus has authority. Jesus has power, and this is different than anybody else in history. And for this reason, we can trust him, and we can rest in him, and we can rely on him. And so the first thing we're going to be talking about is we're going to show how Matthew uses chapter 8 to demonstrate the fact that Jesus has authority. So our first point is authority. Now, I will say it is a pretty big chapter. I encourage you after, please read Matthew 8 on your own. Next week, we're going to finish Matthew 8, and then after that, we're going to get into our Christmas passages, which is Matthew 1 and 2. I'm pretty excited about it. But we're going to finish up Matthew 8, so please finish reading through Matthew 8. But here we go, and so that'll help you guys, reinforce everything I've been saying here. So he has authority. So look at verse 3. He says, I will be clean, and immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And so the first thing we see that Jesus has power over is leprosy. It's a skin disease. This is pretty nuts. I mean, I know some of you probably have the acne problems, the pimple problems. We've all been, teenagers before, and our whole body is like revolting against us, and we're like, what in the world is going on with ourselves? This is even worse. People's leprosy got so bad they would lose fingers. They'd have to wear masks because their face was falling off. Just imagine that. Your own body is rebelling and fighting against itself and is literally falling apart from the inside out. And Jesus has power to cleanse it. Just like you'd wash soap on it and it goes away, instantaneously they were healed. Not only that, look at verse 6. Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. We don't know why. Matthew doesn't give us. We just know this person is unable to move, unable to walk. Maybe he had a fall. Maybe he has an illness. Whatever he is, he's suffering terribly. And in verse 13, Jesus says to this person, go, let it be done for you as you've believed. And the servant was healed at that very moment. So Jesus can cure paralysis. We're just now starting to figure out how to cure and help people walk from paralysis. I mean, they have some amazing things to get the nerves working again and a variety of things there, but here Jesus is like, I'll fix it. Done. Verse 14, and when Jesus entered Peter's house, his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. I just want to say, this is one passage where you talk about the fact that popes in the Catholic Church aren't allowed to get married. How can you have a mother-in-law if you don't have a wife? You guys get that? Peter was married. Peter was older. He was a disciple. He had a wife. Peter could have hated his mother-in-law, but he did not. Guys, love your mother-in-laws. That's a mini sermon. Okay, all right. So he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she rose and began to serve him. You know, like your kids, you probably remember this. Sometimes they'll have these 24-hour bugs. They're just like, oh, I'm sick, I'm dying, blah. And they're just like, and then out of nowhere, they're like, I'm fine. You're just like, wait, you were just sick an hour ago. Like, Petra was sick the night before Thanksgiving. I mean, just blah. We're thinking, man, there's no way she's going to be able to eat any of the food. Well, she literally was fine by Thanksgiving and ate like 100 olives. Just that's the significance here, okay? But this is even more. So older people don't bounce back that quick. So when they're sick in bed with a fever, especially ladies, man, we can sometimes exaggerate this a little too much, but not too much because we really feel this bad, okay? And so, but ladies, stop laughing, all right? So anyway, so ladies, man, when they go down in bed with a fever, you know they're practically dying. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're like, I'm okay. Sweetie, stay down. You have 109 fever. I don't care. And they just go and they just keep working at it. Okay, so we know that the fact that she's lying down with a fever, she is in trouble. And Jesus walks in, boom, done. She gets up and starts doing her mother thing again. Okay, he has power over fevers and viruses. And look at verse 17, and this was at school. So they brought to him demons, spirits, and with a word and healed all who were sick. And this was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. He has power over physical diseases and ailments. Not only that, we see that he also has authority over spiritual enemies. In verse 16, they also brought to him not people who were just sick, but they were oppressed by demons. And he cast out spirits with a word. I'm not of the mindset that every time someone is sick, it's a demon. Or when something bad happens, they have a demon. So you have I struggle with smoking. Oh, well, you have the demon of smoking who's harassing you. You know, our own sinful bodies are so sinful, they will get themselves into trouble without the help of a demon. Let's just be honest, okay? We don't need a demon's help to get into trouble. We're pretty good at it. I have only seen maybe one time where I have witnessed that there was something specifically odd about a person to the point that it gave you the willies, just something was off. But I can't imagine when these people are being oppressed by demons. I'm thankful that as of right now that we don't see this very often in the United States. In other areas that are completely saturated with paganism and demonic stuff, there's a lot more activity. I mean, I've heard stories from missionaries and stuff. There's some pretty crazy stuff that happens. Thankfully, we haven't seen it. So it's hard for us to imagine what this looks like. But we do know that these people were being oppressed by a demon, and Jesus could recognize it for what it was and cast them out, giving these people freedom. He does it in verse 16. He also does it later, which will be what we're going to talk about here next week in verse 28 on, but he also heals these two men who were possessed by demons as well. And so he has power over demonic influences. That's significant. Demonic influences, if we pay attention to it, it's in Jude, where even the archangel Michael, when it comes to demons and when it comes to Satan, actually called forth the power of Jesus Christ to rebuke him. Demonic opposition is not something you take lightly. They're not wimps. I can't fight a demon. He will boink and I'm done. Okay? There is no competition here, and Jesus can literally cast them out and send them away. He also has power. He also has authority. Look at verse 24. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so the boat was being swamped by the waves, and he was asleep. Somehow he has authority over his sleeping and not getting seasick. Man, I would have been blah. And so he's just sleeping away on the boat, and a storm is coming. And they went and woke him, and they're like, save us, we're perishing. And he gets up, and he's like, stop it. That's what rebuke means. Stop. Thank you. Have you ever tried to do that to a windstorm? Stop it. It doesn't listen to you. It doesn't care. It stopped. Jesus has authority over storms. It's nuts. And this one that really fascinates me, it's here in verses 6 through 13. So we're going to dive into this a little bit more, but what happens is this centurion comes forward and says, hey, my servant back home is really sick. He's paralyzed. I need you to heal him. And Jesus is like, okay, I will go and heal him. And the centurion's like, no, you don't have to. And so really what we're seeing here is Jesus has authority over the space-time continuum. You might, anybody with some science fiction things, but you guys remember in school where you had to learn about the x-axis and the y-axis? Remember those? Did you guys learn about those in school? I did. It's x is pretty much width and y is height, and then you add a z, which is adding depth to it, and so it pretty much becomes three-dimensional. And then there's this, that's x, y, z. Wait, x. Yeah. And then there's one more time. And so you have these four dimensions being shoved together, and Einstein talked about it and all this other stuff. Literally, Jesus was standing over here, And it's probably like a mile away was the centurion's house. And all he has to do is says, your servant is healed. And somehow the space-time continuum thing, he doesn't even have to be there. He can heal people just by talking in other cities and other locations. He doesn't have to lay on the hands where the power like goes through his hands onto the person. He literally just says, you're healed. Healed. Perfect. See, doctors have to be there and work on you to do surgery, right? They got to be there. Jesus doesn't even have to be in the same building. And he can just talk through the surgery and you're healed. So you have all these accounts. Jesus has authority over all these things. Over diseases, physical ailments, over the demonic control and demonic opposition. He has authority completely over nature, and he has authority over the space-time continuum, where he doesn't even have to be in the same building to be able to accomplish things in the other room. And so we can get, oh, wow, this is amazing, this is amazing, this is amazing. We have all these miracle accounts of how powerful Jesus is, but he doesn't stop there. See, Matthew has interspersed throughout all of these miraculous accounts what I'm calling faith encounters. And there are 4 types of faiths that are seen here. Okay, so look at verse 25. Okay, so he said, now this is with the waves and the wind, all right? He says, and they went and woke him, saying, save us, Lord, we are perishing. And he said to them, why are you afraid, O you of little faith? So in this first encounter with Jesus having authority over the storms and the clouds, Jesus asked them straight up, why are you scared? You have very little faith in what is going on. There's no reason for you to be scared. I'm right here with you. And he says, you have little faith. And so the first type of faith that we see is the panic freak out. It's being scared, terrified. You guys know the verse, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Faith, they should have realized who they were with, but they didn't. They were panicking and freaking out. And Jesus is like, why do you have such little faith? I'm right here in the boat with you. You have already watched me. So these are the disciples that have walked with him as he literally heals and casts out demons, as he heals people right there, as he completely breaks the space-time continuum and heals people in other buildings on the other side of town, and a storm comes in and they're like, ah! She's like, have you not seen anything I've already done? I can snap my fingers and people are just getting healed. You have such little faith. And so this is the first example of a faith that we see. The second one is actually in verses 19 through 20. So when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go to the other side. And this is right before he got on the boat. And a scribe came up. Now remember, a scribe is someone who interpreted the law, the legal, how the Old Testament applied to your situation. Scribes were the experts. They were the lawyers. They are the ones who knew the law inside and out. They could tell you what it meant, where to reference. So here's a scribe coming up and saying, hey, teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And it's possible some of you guys have subtitles that say the cost of following Jesus or the cost of discipleship. And I think it's missing the point. Matthew has this account tucked in with all of these miracles. He has something he's trying to show us. And so this is right after Jesus has healed Peter's mom, or Peter's mom-in-law. This is right after in verse 17, he says, this was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. So he's setting this up that Jesus is something special. And this guy comes in, he's like, I will follow you everywhere. You know those people that can exaggerate a little bit? Maybe you go to school with one who always seems to be exaggerating the story or something. And here this guy goes and he's like, I believe in you so much. I am willing to do and go wherever you want. Sounds really cool, doesn't it? Wow. This guy is so faithful. This guy's so amazing. And Jesus doesn't even tell him, good job. Jesus actually just replies, foxes have holes. That's when a fox has a hole to go to bed in. Birds of the air have nests. They have somewhere to lay. But the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. See, when you follow me and you're acting all big and you're amazing and your faith is so great and you're wanting a response, I'm telling you, you don't even know what you're asking. Jesus is like, hey, faith in me is not being overzealous and overconfident. See, Jesus is like, I don't even have a place where I sleep. I literally walk around from town to town, house to house, and I sleep where people decide to let me sleep. That is life with me. That's what faith with me looks like, and we don't even hear it described again. He just sort of disappears. See, his faith is overzealous. I think he was trying to impress Jesus with his dedication. And this isn't faith. See, a scribe, this is what Jesus spoke against. A scribe believed that you could do enough in order to earn God's favor. And so here a scribe is. They've already been talked about, and they've already been, there's a difference between the Pharisees and the scribes, and Jesus is teaching, and the scribe comes up trying to impress Jesus. And Jesus is like, I'm not impressed. As a scribe, as a lawyer, he might have been successful, whatever, we don't know, but the scribe had a place to sleep. In his overzealousness, he didn't really understand what faith was. He was trying to impress. The next one we see just very quickly after that, he says, another one of the disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead. Man, Jesus is a jerk. I've heard people stumble over this. Like, this just sounds so mean. Or we try to preach it. See, discipleship is just letting your parents die because you're following Jesus. What? Because Jesus wouldn't let you leave and go bury your parents when they die? Isn't that making them a little heartless? I mean, think about that. Sorry, Peter. I know your mom-in-law who we just healed, she got hit by a carriage. I know we're in town, but you will follow me. Guys, we're making Jesus out to be a monster. I've heard it preached like that. Cost of discipleship is willing to give up your family and go to Africa. And you hear your parents are sick and you let them die and rot because you love Jesus. He says, follow me. Follow me. I said, come with me. Let's walk through this. Let's walk with life together. And when the dead happens, let the dead bury the dead. Not as in you can't go and take care of, but what this guy is saying here is, let me follow you and let me stay until my dad passes away. As in, I have so much stuff. I have more important things than following you. It's not that Jesus wouldn't let somebody go and bury their loved one. Seriously, Jesus would have probably gone to the funeral with them. Somebody you love is hurting. We're here. Let's go. Let's mourn over this. We see this. Jesus is one who cares. What this guy is saying is, I have more important things to do. Let me take care of my parents' business first, and then I'll follow you. Let me take care of this, because do any of us know when our parents or siblings or loved ones are going to pass away? None of us. So what are you saying there? You just don't really know. God, I'll follow you sometime, eventually, somewhere in the future. I don't know when I'll follow you, but it'll be after these other important things are taken care of. It's not faith. That's just, you have more important things to do. So then we see this third one. And then we see this example in verse 5. And so, when he'd entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him, appealing to him, said, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And he said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion replied, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority, with soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. And when Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at the table with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into outer darkness, and that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And the centurion, Jesus said, go, let it be done for you as you have believed. And the servant was healed at that very moment. A Gentile had the greatest faith in Israel. So much so that Jesus says here in verses 11, he says, I will tell you, many will come from the east and the west and recline at the table with Abraham. And so Jesus is already telling, and he's telling his Jewish followers, people are going to come from the east and the west. Those aren't Jews. Those are Gentiles. Those are the unclean. They will come from the east and west, and they will sit at the table of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. While the sons of the kingdom, in reference, the sons of Israel, the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are going to be cast into hell, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you ever gnashed your teeth? It usually happens, like the closest example is when we're sleeping and you wake up and your mouth hurts. Because for whatever reason, whatever dream you were having or the stress you were having the day before, you're like, oh, hurts. The pain is so bad there that people are clenching down as hard as they can. I had a dentist appointment here a few days ago. You guys might have seen the picture. They shove like a wedge in your mouth so you don't bite down on their fingers on accident. And you clamp down on that as hard as you can because the numbing stuff doesn't work on you. It hurts. And you just squeeze as tight as you can because it's hurting so bad. That's what it's like. And he's saying people here in Israel who are supposed to be God's chosen people, they have no faith. And they're going to be cast there. But the centurion, he is going to recline at the table because he has great faith. And this is the last example of faith, and that is calm, cool, and collected. See, here is the centurion. He comes, and he realizes that his servant is in trouble. His servant is paralyzed and suffering. See, a centurion during that time he was pretty much a Roman sergeant on steroids. Let me explain this, because you know how, some of the sergeants I have met, and maybe you guys have met them, but sergeants have, they've been there, done that. They've done this for a few years. You know, people don't just say, oh, you're a sergeant, congratulations. They've had to been around the block a few times. And so you can usually, I think, trust a sergeant. It's different than lieutenants. And I hear second lieutenants have a funny reputation. In the military, am I right here saying that? Like, They think they have authority, but they're actually just complete noobs. Okay, see, so there we go. So that's thank you. And so there's something different about a sergeant, okay? But a centurion is like a sergeant who just kept on going. Because back in the Roman Empire, in order to become a centurion, you lead about 100 soldiers, okay? And so that's what it was. And then you would have quite a few of these centuries that would be combined together and to form a legion. All right, so he was one of the leaders. There wasn't that much difference rank. When you're a centurion, you lead 100, they work together, come up with the battle plans, etc., and they lead their 100 guys. They didn't lead from behind. The centurion was in front. And so if we're talking about a centurion on the eastern front of the Roman Empire, this dude was a bad mamma jamma. He'd been there. He'd fought. He'd probably had the cool eye scar. This guy was awesome. This guy could walk. This guy walked into the room and his biceps and his muscles, you're just like. And not only that, they had these cool hats. This dude was, when you think of like a Roman soldier, this guy was it. He was a self-made Rambo on the battlefield. Who was also, he had this uncanny ability to talk and communicate with people because to get promoted up to the ranks. So he talked the talk and could walk the walk. And so this guy comes in, he probably has a few guards with him. And he walks in and he goes to Jesus. And he says, I have a servant who is sick. Lord, you can help him. Will you please do it? And Jesus' response is, I will come and heal him, the centurion. And I find this just amazing. He's like, no, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Because the centurion realized there was something different about Jesus. That he was not even worthy to have this guy come in. This is a centurion. This guy was somebody. And he's like, no, I don't even want you to come into my house. I am unworthy for you to even step inside. And he appeals to his authority. And he says, I am under authority with soldiers under me. And I literally say, go, and they go. And I say, come, and they come. And I say, cluck like a chicken, and they cluck like a chicken. What I say goes. And Jesus, I know you can do this. Just say it. And right there, Jesus realizes this centurion understands my authority. He gets it. All the centurion did was appeal to the authority of God, and Jesus celebrated this man's faith. He says, go, let it be done for you as you have believed. And the servant was healed at that very moment. You could imagine the look of joy because I don't think the centurion left. Like, man, I hope he answered my prayer. I hope he answered it. He was probably excited to get back home. Gets back home. And you know who's standing at the door? His servant. His right-hand man, his friend's right at the doorway. What that be? I can move. You can just tell they were just excited. Look, my back, my legs, everything works. Whoa. That's the faith that Jesus celebrates. Recognize who Jesus is and the power he has and rest in that. Trust in that. So I want you to think about so far what Jesus has, or I think about what Matthew has created here in this chapter. So he has patched together multiple miracle accounts with not really any detail. We just know he cast some people out, he healed this, he does this, and Matthew zooms in on one giant story. He records more about the centurion's faith in the midst of all this. And then you have a couple of these other guys who are a little overzealous, and guys are like, I'll follow you later, God. And then you have the example of the disciples, but you have this awesome account of the centurion. one who was not worthy. And that's what Matthew said. And so as we read this, faith should scream out at us. And we have to ask ourselves, what's my faith? Is my faith the panic freak out when stuff happens to me? Do I just not talk to God in a while? And then I talk to him and suddenly I'm like, God, I will follow you to the ends of the earth. Just fix this flat tire of mine. I will never, ever, ever sin again. Ever. Amen. Fix the tire. And the next day, you sin. Within 10 minutes. Oh, man, God, you didn't answer my prayer request. I'm sin again. Or are you I'll choose to follow God later. When it gets more comfortable, like I'll hear, hey, you should come to church on Sunday, or you should do this. Yeah, I just got more. I will when things in my life calm down. Okay, I have more important things to do. I even hear it from some of you at times, and I tell you, the most important place that you can be on a weekly basis is here. And it's not because you're listening to me. It's because together, as a community, this helps and heals, and it should build us up. As we study the Word together, as we interact, as we encourage and talk, and there's a place there, it's always, don't push it off, don't push it off. And some people push off their relationship with the Lord. I have more important things to do. I'll pray tomorrow. I have my Clash of Clans game to do. I'll read my Bible later. This football game's really good. Oh man, I should really go and help that person move, but my Call of Duty friends are calling out to me, and gotta save the world from the Nazis. So go off and we do that. We also have something better to do, something more important. Or you can take this approach where you literally it's just a calm rest in the power of God. Now, we sit here and we're like, okay, I get the calm, the cool, that rest aspect. And I was trying to figure out, how can we connect this? How can we think about this for us? Because some of us have never, ever been in the military. We just haven't been. We don't really have a frame of reference to shape the authority of God. And as I got to thinking here, we see the faith of a centurion. The centurion was a man of authority, and he recognized Jesus' authority. Okay? That's what he could identify with. I recognize that as I am a boss, I am a soldier, I'm a man of authority, I am watching Jesus, and I'm watching what's playing out in his life, and I realize that he is a man of authority and power. Things obey him. Demons obey him. Sicknesses obey him. Whoa. I recognize this. And I was thinking, excuse this application. So I was trying to connect this. We can make the straight blanketed statement where God has authority over everything. We can trust and rest in him. We can make that. But I wanted to try to challenge you guys, and you guys can let me know how it plays out in a few weeks or months or whatever. But the centurion focused on an aspect of the Lord that he himself had. You guys get that? The centurion recognized, I'm a person of authority. I recognize Jesus' authority. I'm going to rest in that. Maybe your primary characteristic of your life, you look and you're like, man, I am just a really giving person. I like to make people happy. I like to serve them. I like to work, and I like to give that. And so let's just call that service, okay? And so maybe that happens to be a quality that makes you tick. You just love it. You love to serve. Spend time over this next week. If you're struggling with your faith and resting in the Lord, and you're really having a hard time, and you're sort of panicking or whatever, then look at it and say, okay, how has God served me recently? Well, he did this here a few weeks ago when I asked. Or I've seen him do this in my friend's life, or I heard about this. And so, God, I'm going to rest in the fact that I'm going through a tough circumstance right now. And Lord, I want to rest in the fact that you are a servant, and you serve and will serve and help me. And I want to rest in that. Does it make sense? So you're sort of resting in a characteristic that may be something you can identify in a little bit better. I don't exactly know how that could play out. Because if you're like, well, I'm a control freak. Yeah, it's probably not your main characteristic. Maybe you want to try to word that in a different light, I mean, and so we can go overboard, with it. But I just want to say, if you look at your life, what is something you recognize that you just happen to do in yourself? And maybe it's love or service, or maybe you're like, hey, my whole life I have been a manager and a boss. And so you can completely recognize this authority thing. And that's what you can rest in. So I don't know what it is in your life, but I want to say if you're struggling with the calm and cool, collected faith, then God has made you a certain way, and you are wired to think a certain way. Think about what that is in your life. And say, okay, God, how am I seeing this play out constantly in my life? And rest in that. And I think I think that'll be maybe easier for you to recognize. Because some of us might not respond well to authority. And it's not because we're a rebel, but maybe we had some really bad experiences with it as a kid. I don't know. Or we had people who literally use their authority as a club and just beat you down with it. And so when you look at authority, you're like, I don't like it. It just rubs me the wrong way. I get it. I get God's a better authority, but I have no picture with that. Makes sense? It's hard to look at authority positively if every example in your life is a bad one. It's sort of hard. And so maybe, okay, so, but I find myself very loving, and I'm very open. I'm very on this, and so that's something you can grab a hold to in the midst of God, and maybe that'll help you take a step and rest. Is it making sense? I want to really try to get that. I'm trying to help us to think it a little bit differently, because I know sometimes we can have a hard time connecting with certain images because of our background, because of what we've been through. And so I'm saying if that happens to be you, then find some of those characteristics about yourself that you happen to see in yourself and in others. And you respond well, and then try to think about God in that way. And then focus on that because you understand it a little bit. Maybe it's sacrifice or love, and then rest in that and bring that to bear on your situation.